and welcome back to the Boropolis podcast. We are back after the international break, and Boro are still unbeaten in the championship, sitting nicely in first position. Nathan, you are back after a little bit of a break. The working world caught up with Rayner, and of course, it was lovely to have Dom Shaw on. But back to our bread and butter this week, and we've got Preston to talk about this evening. We're recording on Saturday night. So, Nathan, obviously, you were in attendance today. Firstly, I just want to, before we delve into the game, talk about the fact that the first game after a Middlesbrough manager has won Manager of the Month, we haven't just been turned over and beaten. So surely that's got to count for something. And also, 5,600 Middlesbrough fans in that away end today. Before we even talk about a ball being kicked, it must have been some atmosphere in that away end at Preston.
Yeah, it's top class support once again, isn't it? Yeah, we always take a good following away at Preston, and in the last half decade, that away following hasn't really been rewarded with all too much to shout about. But today, very pleased to come out with at least something, and I thought that it was your standard championship game, really. If you sum up the championship in a game of football, it was that today. A little bit cagey first half, second half, just two teams going hammer and tongs, throwing blows at each other, very end to end, like a basketball game. So it was a good atmosphere at Deepdale. Always enjoy going to visit that ground as well. It's one of my favourite in the championship. And yeah, selling out that away end behind the goal again is top class, but you'd expect nothing less from Boro at any stage of the season, at any run of form, and with us winning 4 out of 4 at the start of the season and having such a nice away game coming off the back of the break. Yeah, it was nice to be in that away end today and cheer on the boys once again.
Yeah, I think going into the game and obviously when the team come out, there had been a few murmurings, and obviously Rob Edwards kind of admitted it to the media. I'm still getting to grips with a Middlesbrough manager being so open about injuries and illnesses and things like that, it's almost tough to wrap your head around. But we knew going into the game that there was probably going to be a couple of changes or a few eyebrow raisers because of the illness. It was rumoured yesterday that Alfie Jones was one of them that hadn't been very well and had been affected by the bug in the camp, as I think Rob Edwards referred to it as. He obviously played. Of course, you were in the away end. Having the benefit of watching from my living room on Sky, there was a few close-ups where I thought he is looking a little bit green, to be honest. But nonetheless, I thought he still performed to his usual standards. But yeah, obviously with the bug and the illness, and obviously internationals as well, we had Nipan and Strelec coming back slightly later. So I think a lot of people were anticipating that there might be, as I say, a few eyebrow raisers. And I guess the kind of main one in this was the fact that Cali Sen got his first start. Dale Fry was not a victim of the bug. There's not really any update on him at the moment in terms of how his injury is going to be, how long it's going to keep him out the team. Hopefully, in crossing everything, it's not very long. But Daryl Enhan also come in. But yeah, as I say, a couple of changes and quite an interesting team because I think from what we've seen of Cali Sen, albeit a very small glimpse of him against Sheffield United, he looked a number nine that wants to run in behind. It's been constantly referred that he can play in those two positions behind Tommy Conway, but just off watching him, looking at his clips, I always felt that number nine was his kind of go-to best position, and that's where we'll see him closing out games. But actually, a little bit of a different role for him today.
Yeah, a little bit different. I thought that it was a little bit of a strange one. I thought that you may have seen, having seen the team, Whittaker possibly playing as a sole 10 and Sen sort of playing alongside Conway, but wasn't to be really. It was more them being two tens and in behind Conway. But I thought that he did okay there, really. I know he got substituted at half time, but he did okay there, gathering that that's not his best position. I think that you may ask the question of why he's playing there when you do have sort of Hansen as a more natural player to play that position on the bench, but I'm not going to question the man who's won 4 out of 4 in the championship so far, and has won manager of the month as well. So yeah, I'm not going to question his decision making all too much. But yeah, obviously the main sort of talking point was Fry coming out the team with injury. Darragh Lenihan coming into the team for the first time in 2 years or close to 2 years, which yeah, it's a little bit of a risk, I suppose, throwing a player in at the deep end after so long out. And obviously, I think he played in midweek for the under 21s at Halifax. So 2 games in a week for Lenihan. Yeah, it was a little bit of a risk, but still felt confident in going to Preston today.
Yeah, and I think first half, I've seen a lot of talk post match about the fact that we didn't really get going in the first half. And to be honest, I don't necessarily think we were bad. Look, we didn't create all that much, but we certainly never didn't look in control of things. Not a lot of our possession kind of resulted in any major chances. The best chance of the first half from a Middlesbrough perspective is that corner that Target whips in. It kind of falls to Luke Ayling on the volley, and he just basically leans over it and balloons it over. But other than that, there wasn't any huge chances. But as I say, it was largely a fair bit of Middlesbrough possession. And then I think actually, in fairness, I don't know if you kind of recognised it from being in the away end, but it seemed like a little bit going back to parts of that first game against Swansea where it did seem that we tried at least to play balls in behind and slightly longer to Sen, which I'm not necessarily against. You've got to mix things up occasionally if they're gonna keep things tight in midfield and not allow Hayden Hackney and Aidan Morris to get a hold of the game, which they are capable of. We've seen that in Norwich, that they can just run all over you, and technically they're as good as anything in the division, like you say. So you can't really afford to let them get a grip of the game, which I thought, in fairness to Preston, they did quite well to nullify. That longer pass wasn't really quite coming off as much. And strangely enough, when Preston take the lead, it's actually Sen who is closing down. That was one side of his game that I did enjoy first half. He is a relentless runner, very good in the press. And he's running behind, I think it is Jordan's story, and sort of gets a hand across his face. Now, it is a deliberate hand. There's probably not the force there to warrant any kind of punishment or any penalty, but questions to be asked. I mean, it's still a deliberate hand across the face, I suppose, and then literally Sen goes down, and I think basically Middlesbrough failing to kind of reset and get to grips. Eventually, after the stoppage, Dobbin gets on the ball, and I thought he was one of Preston's brightest players today, and he punished Darragh Lenihan and Ayling for hesitating and not going to the ball.
Yeah, a great pass through the centre of our midfield really takes Hackney and Morris out the game. Dobbin just standing in between the lines, picks up the ball, gets on the half turn and drives it at Lenihan and Ayling. The centre forward, Jefferson, sort of occupies Lenihan a little bit and makes a run in behind, which pulls Lenihan away from sort of making that immediate
Yeah,
movement
I
towards
think I
Dobbin.
think Lenahan's instinct, in fairness to him, and to be fair, like you say, this is Jefferson's part in the goal, which allows him to drag Lenahan away easy enough for me to say. But Lenahan does sort of initiate as though he wants to go out, and it's like defensive instinct to go towards the ball. I think he's just got to kind of trust his mind a little bit here and just go and try and make contact, really. He doesn't. That allows that few extra yards.
And then obviously, to be fair to Dobbin, he gets it out of his feet and it's a great finish. Strikes it really well in the top corner. Solbren had no chance, and you're thinking, is it going to be one of those days at Deepdale again? To be fair, there wasn't a whole amount that happened following the goal in the first half. There was a little scramble that Preston had in our box and it was cleared away by Morris. We didn't create all too much. There was once where Whittaker got found between the lines and played a ball into Hackney, who drove forward and had a shot wide. But yeah, there wasn't a whole amount of chances in that first half. You were just hoping that we could sort of quicken things up, play with a little bit more intensity, and see what Preston have got. See if they are as resolute as they have looked at home so far this season. And yeah, he made the change at halftime, didn't he? Rob Edwards bringing on David Strelec for his Boro debut off the bench for
Were you a
Callie
little
said.
bit surprised? Sorry, Nathan, to jump in. Were you a little bit surprised it was only Strelec?
Yeah, possibly. I actually thought Hansen would have been coming on because I sort of always look to see who is in and around that immediate substitutes group, and Hansen was late coming back out the dressing room by quite a considerable stretch as well. So I thought that he could have been coming on a lot quicker than he did in the end. Obviously, Neapad came on before him as well. But yeah, possibly a little bit. Maybe a
I
change for
was
Whittaker. I'm not so
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, I was gonna say the for me the first half especially it screamed out that what we were trying it felt the gap in between midfield and the two tens and Conway was just a little bit disconnected. It was just too far of a gap between the two. Obviously, as I say, Preston were making things quite difficult in midfield by getting really tight to both Morris and Hackney. But if you then introduce a Nipan, who we obviously saw has a huge impact in the game, but I felt like we needed that link between midfield and attack, someone to really pick up pockets. And I do think Strelec coming on definitely did improve us. He definitely offered something very much different to what Sen had been. But yeah, I was just intrigued because I thought we may have seen two or three. I mean, we've seen now that Rob Edwards certainly isn't afraid to make two or three changes at the break.
Yeah, definitely not. And as I say there, I was possibly a little bit surprised that it wasn't Whittaker at half time. Obviously, he was on a yellow card in the first half as well. And I thought that despite Sen not offering loads, there was a couple of instances in the first half where he had won the ball back pressing, and also a couple of times where he got played in down that left hand side and he decided to take on a Preston centre half and take them up the line and try and deliver something in the box. But yeah, I was sort of expecting that if there was going to be a change, it'd be for Morgan Whittaker. And to be fair, as I said, we were hoping that going in the second half that we'd see a quickening up of the pace, and we did for the opening 5, 10, 15 minutes of that second half. We were a lot more intense in our actions, just zipping it about a lot quicker and creating different scenarios to whip balls into the box and play triangles in sort of the areas in and around the 18-yard box. Now, I think that in Whittaker's case, in this early spell in the second half, I felt that he actually did pretty okay. He was picking up positions, which, to be fair, I think that a lot of people will understand that Morgan Whittaker does pick up good positions and will always be in a position to receive the ball. However, it is then what he does with that ball, which is why people have a gripe with him. Obviously, the main one that stands out to me is he gets the ball and drives inside. He has Callum Britton and Tommy Conway. Britton's sort of ahead of him, but he doesn't pick his head up and play Conway. I don't think that's necessarily the wrong decision. I think he was in a position to be able to fire a shot at goal, but hitting a Preston player in there, it's not the best really to be able to hit a player there rather than the target. Yeah, I thought that it would have been right to make the change for Nipan coming on when he did make it, but obviously the treatment of Whittaker was a talking point post match. It was a talking point for me and my brother who were at the game today. As it happened, it's just embarrassing. It's absolutely embarrassing to jeer off one of your own players. At any point in the season, it's a disgrace to jeer or boo any of your own players. We've seen it in the last 6 months with Iheanacho getting that treatment. Azaz has been a boo boy at times, and obviously now Azaz has gone, Whittaker's the man for everyone to treat as a scapegoat. Yes, his performances haven't been the best. I'm sure he'll be very understanding of that point as well, and that he's going out there week on week and he is trying his heart out. He's not the type of player that is a relentless presser like Kalisen is. Finn Azaz is the same. He's not a relentless presser, but what he offers you is he's always in a position to receive the ball, and he always likely does receive that ball. It is obviously what's going on afterwards and making wrong decisions. Sometimes the pass is too light, sometimes it's too heavy, sometimes he just picks the wrong option.
He's lost his confidence, hasn't he?
He's lost his confidence completely, and to have a large portion of that away today jeer him off is it just makes me think it's just pathetic
Yeah,
of the fan base, and to see the reaction as well to him walking down the tunnel after he'd been substituted. What do you think he's going to do? He's probably absolutely gutted with the reaction. You've seen his social media in the last couple of weeks while we've been winning games, always complimenting the fans and playing in this team. He's evidently enjoying himself and being a part of this group, but being treated that way by the fans is totally not on. It's not great at all. I hope he scores the winner next week and gives it big licks to all the home fans, if I'm honest.
yeah. I think it's certainly an interesting dynamic, especially given Kieran Scott was quite keen to highlight the reason why Finn Azaz left the football club. Kieran Scott said, he has left, and a large part of the reason that he felt unhappy and wanted to leave the football club was the fact that he just didn't feel liked by supporters, didn't feel kind of appreciated. Look, I was one of those. We spoke on numerous occasions last season about the fact that he wouldn't impact games when you really wanted him to. And I'm not going to kind of get drawn into the Finn Azaz debate again, but I think just obviously given the reaction that Morgan Whittaker's got today, after Kieran Scott has publicly said kind of, I don't think supporters realise how big of an impact it actually has in terms of social media comments or in terms of just the general fan reaction when they enter the pitch or exit the pitch. For him then to be jeered, it's not ideal. And I think for me, I'm very much, if players turn out an absolute shocking performance and you don't think they're trying, and I think that's very, very unlikely that professional footballers never actually try. It's a bit of a cheap cop out of a criticism for most supporters, and I've probably fallen into that trap before. But it's not a case of, you know, he hasn't been booed, so that's different. But if people pay their money and people turn out a performance or a team turns out a performance that is pathetic, by all means, boo. I don't really care, to be honest. But jeering someone who is still giving his all, I don't think that's a question at all. Even Ian Acho, when he was jeered being taken off, he was being paid incredibly handsomely and basically strutted about and done absolutely nothing, and sometimes didn't even look like he was trying. I can kind of accept that one, to be honest. Yeah, some people might say that you should always support your players, but if they're not going to try, then why should it kind of they be applauded for not fully, impacting games or fully trying to impact games at least? But yeah, that's just not the case with Whittaker. He's certainly lost his confidence, and I think it's one of them where it sounds so cliche, but I just want him to score his first goal, and I think it would just settle him down completely. I do think even still his decision making is really off at the moment, but once he scores his first, hopefully that'll just take a massive weight off his shoulders. And I mean today, look, I'm not saying uh, Morgan Whittaker was very great today, but Hayden Hackney's decision making today was off compared to usual. And I know Hayden Hackney's decision making usually isn't off, but no one was jeering when Hayden Hackney got taken off the pitch, and his decision making wasn't great today. So, yeah, I completely agree with Rob Edwards, and in all fairness to him, if we'd lost the first 3 or 4 games and then that happened today, then it doesn't make it more acceptable. But we're top of the league. We still haven't been beaten. Just clap him off and give Nipan a massive change. You know what I mean? It's just not really necessary, is it?
No, it's totally not. But yeah, as you say, clap your player off and then give the next one who's coming on a cheer if you're pleased with the substitution. That'd be fine. And look, people will say, "Oh well, we jeered him off. It was more because of the substitution. We were crying out for that substitution. We wanted to see Nipan on." Great. I'd sort of agree to that point. As I say, Whittaker didn't have the best game today, and obviously, from what we've seen of Nipan so far in very small flashes, he's been relatively impressive. And making that change today, as you say, was sort of one of those where it'd help the link between midfield and attack. And Nipan came on, and sure enough, within a couple of minutes of being on the pitch, receives the ball wide right and produces a really good bit of skill left to right and sneaks it through the legs of a defender, delivers across the face of goal. Conway doesn't really make the best contact at first, gets blocked by a Preston defender. It's always the case at Deepdale with Preston. I don't know what it is, but the bodies on the line is just constant. Does my head in. And
I know what you mean by that because I feel like even in last year's game when Bergsorg scored, there was like a mad sort of 10-15 minutes where it just felt like there was just constant scrambles in the box. So yeah, it's not only you. I think it is a Deepdale thing in all honesty.
yeah, and then thankfully the ball breaks and coming in as the coaches have been saying, getting bodies in the box when we were able to get cutbacks and things like that. The opposite wing back, Matt Target, comes flying in and just swings his right foot at it, and it's a great finish, to be fair, into the corner. And the video that I've seen of the goal going in, and you just see that away end behind the goal absolutely erupt. And to be fair, I think sometimes when you're in away ends like that, roaring your team on, trying to suck the ball into the back of the net, and then you eventually get there, obviously, a couple of minutes before we had the offside goal as well, you just sort of lose yourself. And like lo and behold, I'm like climbing over seats when targets ping that one in the bottom corner, the flares on the pitch. Yeah, the away end was just booming, and you're hoping that they can then go on and get another, which we had a couple of sort of forays forward, but nothing too much really after the goal. Couple of moments, as I said at the start of the podcast, it was just very much we'd attack and get to their box, and the wrong decision would be made. They'd drive forward and sort of get into our half of the pitch, and a wrong decision would be made, and it was just back and forth for what felt like about 10-15 minutes of us just both going for it, really. Obviously, they made four changes
I
at one
actually think
stage.
that Preston almost, and funnily enough, they obviously score and take the lead again. But I actually felt that those changes from Heckingbottom took the well, I don't want to say took the wind out of their sails, but in terms of attacking threat, and you mentioned it did become a little bit like hectic at times once they'd made those substitutions, they were just like lumping it up to Michael Smith, and obviously he's not going to burn anyone for pace. So Darrell Lenihan's not blessed with pace, and neither's Luke Ayling. But I'd back both of those in a foot race over Michael Smith. So yeah, those changes were a bit odd.
Yeah, they were. As I said, I thought Jefferson had a pretty good game, and taking him off for Smith might have been one that there's possibly a little bit of regret in hindsight doing. So I thought Jefferson did okay in the game. Thought he offered something dropping deep and being able to get on the half turn and play forward. I thought that their wing backs were pretty good as well. But yeah, it was a pretty hectic spell after our equaliser. You were just hoping that you could sneak something. Obviously, we had Conway drive into the box and have a swan dive. It was never a pen really, but it's just funny when you get one of them moments in front of an away end that's as packed as it is. People have just got the Boro tinted glasses on, singing "You don't know what you're doing" to the referee. When Conway would have got a 10 from me if we were in
Yeah,
the Olympics.
I was gonna say he gets a solid rating for that one. He had a similar one at Norwich, didn't he? But yeah, it wasn't his finest moment in a Borough shirt, Tommy Conway. Just on the dynamic of kind of that attacking trio, I guess you could call it, before we do talk about Preston taking the lead. It was a little bit interesting in the sense of when Strelic was introduced, he went as the nine, and Conway played slightly to the left. And as you say, it was Nipan that was sort of in that channel. I think, like you touched on earlier with Sen and Conway, and I do think we probably will see this at some point. I think the best dynamic for those players which finished the game, well, I say finish the game, but before Hansen come on, it would be Nipan slightly further forward than Hackney and Morris, with Strelec and Conway as more of a two playing off each other, or certainly Strelec as like a second striker to Conway. I actually thought Conway was pretty okay, but it's not really his game, having the ball and trying to beat a fullback when he is forced out wide, which those roles sometimes, it just happens the way that the shape works out. So I think if that's going to be, and I very much expect it to be going forward, if that's going to be the attacking trio, probably needs a little bit of a rejig, because I think Strelec, for me, from everything that we've seen or from all of his clips, he seems to be much more effective when he's got a bit of a license to roam. He kind of played as the vocal point when he come onto the pitch.
Yeah, I think it's just a case of Edwards and the coaching staff sort of working out where it's best to fit everyone in.
Yeah,
And I think, to be fair, Conway doesn't mind drifting out wide to that left-hand channel, which keeping him out there might have been a mistake in hindsight, but I thought he did okay there. I thought he did okay in the first half, to be fair, when he was the focal point, he kept dropping in. And to be fair, I've been quite sort of critical of Conway in the first couple of podcasts about his abilities not really suiting either playing long into him. The ball doesn't usually stick into him, but I felt today it did. Really, there was a moment in the first half where Target looked like he was shaping to play a ball up the channel, and then just darted one into Conway, but about sort of chest height, and he just held off a Preston defender, sort of got on the turn and drove out wide, and then played a ball down to Britton. And I thought, that's much better, much better. That's what we need. But yeah, I thought that off the left, he did okay, but you can tell it's sort of unnatural for him to be in
yeah.
that position
I
and
guess,
diving out fullback.
yeah. I was just gonna say on the Strelec thing, potentially, I think he only linked up with the squad late Wednesday night, possibly even Thursday from memory. It might have just been a case of Rob Edwards not really having too much time with Strelec and just saying, go and play as a number nine. I mean, it's a role that he's familiar with. He doesn't know the sort of ins and outs of how he wants his two off the striker to play. So maybe it was just a communication thing. So I guess we'll wait and see. But certainly probably going to be a little bit of trial and error with those forward players, at least for the next couple of weeks, until we kind of, you know, stumble across what is going to be hopefully a free flowing forward line. In the most typical of Middlesbrough fashion, I actually felt before Preston retook the lead in the 88th minute, I think it was. We had our spell of the game that I was referring to where Preston just seemed to want it anywhere on the pitch but in their box, in outside the 18-yard box. We were really starting to, without creating huge openings, pile on the pressure. And I felt it was just a matter of time before there would be another scramble and we'd somehow work it into the back of the net. And in all honesty, when when the corner comes in from Preston and Jordan Story's there, and in fairness, I think actually in the build up to this goal, he goes on some marauding run down the right and somehow manages to keep possession. Alan Brown's having a dig at him and trying to work it off him. And in fairness, he gets his reward because he kind of just ghosts in unmarked. I think it's Aylin's man, and he just gets a little bit occupied trying to wrestle. And there's a blocker there from Preston as well, which I think is actually Michael Smith. But when we conceded that, it would have been unthinkable for me if we'd have not come away with something today. Because I think in large periods of the game, and I think people have kind of underdone. Yes, we again without creating huge chances. I thought again we played well, not really well, but I think on the basis of the game, I personally and I don't even think it's Boro tinted glasses, Christopher, saying this. I actually thought we were the much better side. I know Heckingbottom's kind of said, yeah, I think it's an even result and this, that, and the other, but it would have been a travesty for me if we hadn't come away with at least a point today. But as I say, it was very nearly typical Boro at their peak, really.
Yeah, it nearly was, wasn't it? And I think that it's a bit funny the way that fans look at things. Obviously, we won our first 4 games of the season, but if you look at those games in a little bit more detail, Swansea was even and we won by a set piece. Millwall was even to a point, and okay, we scored a couple of late goals in that one, but it was even for large spells of that. I think Norwich, despite it being a tight 2-1 win, I thought that we dominated that more than any game than we have so far this season. We were the better team by a stretch throughout that game. And then obviously Sheffield United, I thought we were the better team, but it was tight. They obviously had a chance in the first half. They obviously had the chance at the end of the game as well with McCallum. Look, we had chances as well. I'm not saying that, but all those games have been even, and we've fallen on the correct side of the result for all 4 of those games. Which in previous seasons you can argue, oh well, like we've fallen quite lucky, but I don't think we have. I think that we've sort of earned the right to those results. And today, I felt that with the game being so even, that we did deserve a point from the game today. But when that goal goes in, you just think, is this going to be your typical championship game where it's very even and you just get hit with a sucker punch? A little bit of a moment of quality with a cross into the box and a great header as well from Story. In fairness, it's right in the corner, in off the post almost. And you're thinking, yeah, despite playing relatively well throughout the second half of the game, especially, is it not going to be our day? And to be fair, Rob Edwards, as soon as the goal goes in, pulled Hansen on, get on there and offer us something. And to be fair, he got the ball and whipped across to the back post pretty much immediately after coming on, and there was no one on the end of it. And I thought, you look like it looks bright, even though like time's ticking. We had a couple of set pieces throughout the game today.
Who knew Matt Target was the? I was going to say the modern day Leighton Baines, but I'm sure they probably played at some point in the same era. Yeah, I thought his set pieces were very good today, actually, Matt Target. I certainly didn't have him down as a set piece specialist when we signed him.
Yeah, there were a lot of them were on the money and in good positions. And he puts that one in the box. Ayling flicks it on. Strelec just dives and I think he chests it. And obviously you have Daniel Everson in goal, who before Victor Johansson, there was Daniel Everson in his first loan spell at Preston. He was just a horrible bastard of a goalkeeper. Every time he played against him, he's a really good goalkeeper. And he's returned there now. And I said to my brother on the way in this morning, I said, oh, that goalkeeper. I said, I remember him years ago. He was really, like, really bright. And I think there was a point where Boro were linked with him. And I thought, yeah, I'd have him all day long. And makes the save and then dives, flicks the ball back into the mix. Hansen just comes flying in. It's all chaos. Hansen does really, really well
The
with his
technique on
break.
this is incredible.
The technique,
No one's really talking about it because of the scramble, but the technique is outrageously good.
just to keep it down
Yeah,
and get it back into the mix is phenomenal. But gets on his side, scissor kicks it back into the mix, into the corner, opposite corner to where Everson's just come from as well, which is really important. And then I think it's just a big mix up, really. Obviously, there's bodies flying all over the place. Harrison Armstrong's on the line, and the ball sort of just like I think Everson does get across and sort of makes another save, and then it sort of the ball is rotating
yeah.
goalwards.
The backspin of it, sort of, and Alan Brown doing his best Superman impression to try and make contact, sort of forces it in. But in the end, I don't think Brown actually touches the ball.
No, I don't.
Initially, everyone was of the, and I mean, the script was written really, wasn't it, for him? Played over 400 games or whatever it was for Preston. But I don't actually think he does touch it. And interestingly, another little sort of narrative to the goal. And honestly, when I say this, of course, Nathan's been at the game. You're always a little bit kind of out the loop. Before we started recording, I said I'm not even sure the ball went over the line. I'm still not sure it did. But Nathan didn't believe me when I said that there was no goal line technology, and this was literally only discovered midway through the commentary as well. The commentator, just as that had happened, well, I say midway towards the end, when we just scored, the commentator decided to just say, "Oh, by the way, there's no goal line technology today. The technology failed, so they just kind of went with the way it used to be. The refereeing assistant or linesman makes the call on over the line, yes or no." And a few people have put screenshots up. I don't think I could conclusively say that that ball has crossed the line. I think it probably has, but it is one of them where even though it's being given and it's a goal, like there's a little like bit of anxiety in my stomach, still thinking like, oh, Jacob Butterfield away at Burnley like 15 years ago or something like that. Like, oh God, imagine the championship with no goal line technology.
Yeah, I think it'd be unfair to deny that. Having seen the screenshot where like pretty much all of the balls over the line, it's it's a midgie's ass if it's on the line. Like it is literally that one years ago. Do you remember when John Stones cleared one off the line against Liverpool,
Yeah,
and it
yeah,
was
yeah,
literally like the tiniest bit
yeah.
on the line. It must have been like that. And to be fair, it's a proper scrappy goal, but you take them all day. You take them all day long. And I said in the week leading up to the game, I think I said it to you, definitely said it to a lot of others. I'd take a point all day at Preston. Take a point all day just to get in to a ground that we don't have the best record at. Play at a ground which Leicester and Ipswich have been to this season and have came away with an out.
Yeah.
So going there, coming back twice in the game was really really positive. To do that, see a couple of the new faces, obviously Strelec and Sen in a more well in a longer time frame to be able to actually watch him and see what he's about was good. And yeah, to be part of an away end that got to celebrate a late equaliser was really really nice. Although it was a little bit strange when the goal went in because the referee points to the halfway line, which everyone's like, right, goals given, great. But all our players just ran back to the halfway line.
It's
None of them
mentality
celebrated the
thing.
goal.
It's a mentality thing. They're drilled now, Nathan. These lot are cold-blooded killers. They thought, I tell you what, there's still 2 minutes on the watch. Let's try and nick another one. In fairness to them, I actually like that. I mean, there was very little chance they were going to, but when you talk about mentality and wanting to win, dying embers of a game, and they're thinking, I'm not celebrating. Get back the halfway line. We might nick another here. And can I just say as well, in terms of a mentality, a lot of people have been, well, not keen, but have been intrigued to see how Boro react to a setback. And not necessarily a setback in terms of getting hammered off Doncaster in the Cup, but a setback in a game. Look, again, still very early, but those signs that you want to see of a team that are going to compete towards the top end of the division, their desire to never give up, their desire to not roll over, and basically just not knowing when they're beaten. And I think to come, especially at a ground, and I know, does it really play a part? Who knows? But at a ground where Middlesbrough have struggled at sincerely over the years, to come from behind twice is really really pleasing, and if that's to continue, I mean, everyone, the old adage, win your home games, draw your away games. We're still top of the league, so we're sitting pretty. I just wanted to give, before we move on to West Brom, a special shout out to whoever it was in the Preston staff, the stewardess that just decided to look at the smoke bomb for about 4 minutes. Thanks for the added time, I guess, because look, I know procedures have got to be followed and there's all kinds of health and safety, but it was very apparent that when we got the equaliser, that was a smoke bomb that was just going to keep on running and running and running. She had a protective glove, a bucket of sand, what I imagine. Could have quite easily just picked it up with a protective glove on and put it a little bit of sand on the top and got rid of that after maybe 30 seconds, let's say. Instead, the game just stopped for about sort of 4 or 5 minutes, and in the end, you could argue that she's actually got an assist for Boro to get a point today. So thank you very much to the Preston member of staff that decided to just watch on and grin as the red smoke descended on Deepdale.
Yeah, it's one of those things, isn't it? I think everyone will get their comeuppance by some point come May. But yeah, it's landed nicely in our favour this afternoon to get a point away from home and continue the unbeaten run for another week at least, which is very, very nice. There's not many that are hanging around the championship now that are still unbeaten, by the way. And now we'll get on to one of those teams that we play next Friday night live on Sky Sports, who lost their unbeaten run this afternoon, which is obviously West Bromwich Albion, who I think you've been very impressed by them from everything that I can hear in the last, well, since the season began, really. I think you've watched them more than I have, particularly the Wrexham game, which I think will have been second game of the season. But obviously, new manager in charge for West Brom, Ryan Mason, been sort of in and around football coaching for the last few years, obviously since having to retire very early as well because of that serious head injury that he had years ago. But being at Tottenham as a caretaker a couple of times, I think. Managed Spurs in a cup final, by the way.
Yeah, that's still. I mean, that decision to sack Mourinho the couple of days before a cup final is still one of the worst decisions ever made by a chairman of a football club. But yeah, getting sidetracked a little bit. In terms of obviously you saying me watching West Brom, I think when I say impressed by West Brom, it's mainly been, and to be honest, he's been absolute star of the show for them. I've been impressed with Isaac Price. I think his goal tally is now 3 for the season. I believe he actually scored in the international break as well for Northern Ireland. Someone that has, and I'm certainly not comparing him because it would be quite the comparison in the championship, but for his age, just has that kind of swagger and something that I don't know if it's the fact he's got low socks and the kind of like slicked or sweep back hair, a little bit of a Jack Grealish type feel about him, where different player, more of like from what I've seen of him at least, seems to be like a second striker almost, but just has that, yeah, as I say, that real like probably arrogance, to be honest. And I listened to an interview that he did before the Wrexham game, and he says, "Yeah, like why can't I?" Because I think he scored on the opening day of the season, and went on to say basically, "Well, why can't I kind of carry on this run and be the person that gets West Brom in and around the playoffs this season with my goals and my contributions?" And then he went and scored two in that game and won them that, well, I say won them that game, played a big part in winning them that game. And I think, as well as that, someone that has kind of been darting in and about the division for the last maybe season or two, Nat Phillips, very much a head it and kick it centre half, but I do think he does that incredibly well. And they've also partnered him with Chris Metham, who was excellent at Sunderland last season. They've got two real steady eddies in terms of someone who we know very well, Alex Mowat, and Malumbi beside him as well. Just always a midfield that would probably get you in and around the playoffs. I think just overall a really decent spine, and obviously Ryan Mason will have his own ideas on what to get out of his wide players, etc. But just a very decent spine for me.
Yeah, they're a steady championship side, aren't they? With the added sprinkling of a little bit of flair at the top of the pitch with Price and Mikey Johnston as well off the left hand side, and obviously Jed Wallace as well.
The veteran still going.
Still in and around it. Yeah, just on Nat Phillips calling him a head it and kick it centre half. Do you not remember his Cruyff turn on the edge of the box at the San
Yeah,
Siro?
yeah, I do actually. So maybe I'm doing him unjust there. I think it was past Zlatan as well, wasn't it? I'm pretty
Yeah,
certain. So
yeah,
yeah, maybe I've been totally unfair. I think that was that GIF or that highlight has been looped and looped and looped by Liverpool fans for years, hasn't it? I seem to see it like once every month. I guess a little bit of an interesting one in the sense that it's also, I mentioned Alex Mowat, but there's also another ex-Borough player that'll be returning to the Riverside, Samuel Illing Jr. By all accounts, West Brom seem to have signed him to play in a more advanced role. He never really got the chance at Middlesbrough, but someone that I was quite quite impressed with. Never, completely excelled like a Ben Doak did, but was pretty good for Middlesbrough in his loan spell, and I think he'll be a decent addition for West Brom as well. So that'll be interesting. I guess he's going to come up against Callum Britton, so Callum Britton's performances seem to get better week by week in my eyes. So it'll be an interesting battle, that one.
yeah. It definitely will be. I think it's a cracking game for the championship neutrals on Friday night to be able to kick back and relax and watch two good championship teams go blow for blow. And fingers crossed we see some Rob Edwards fist pumps on Friday night live on the box. That'd be absolutely phenomenal. And it would set up a really nice, enjoyable weekend of Saturday and Sunday to be able to just sort of knock the onus back to the rest of the championship and say, yeah, go on then, what have you got?
Yeah, that would be lovely. I mean, as well as that, just the idea of we're getting into progressing towards those wintry nights where the floodlights will be beaming down. I'm sure by the time we kick off, it'll be a little bit dark, and the thought of Borough, really cushioning themselves at the top of the league going into a weekend full of fixtures. Can you imagine if you'd said that before a ball had been kicked this season?
Yeah, it has come as a surprise, but I'm just happy that they've first of all got off to a cracking start, but then today, after a break and bedding in a couple of players, that the hard work of today's performance, especially in that second half, didn't amount to nothing, and
Yeah,
they got the just rewards through a little bit of scrapping towards the end of the game, and yeah, it was nice to be there today to sort of see them just show a little bit of a different side as well to well the end product in the end, which was as I say a little bit scrappy, but fingers crossed we can follow up a point away at Deepdale with another good result and performance on Friday night.
yeah, absolutely. Well, Nathan, I think that wraps us up for this week. Just in time to catch some of the 8 o'clock Saturday night kickoff, which is bizarre to say. But yeah, I just wanted to say a massive, massive thank you to everyone that commented, liked, subscribed off the back of the transfer window roundup that we did with Dom. Obviously, I think one of the comments said, "When Dom Shaw talks, you listen." You know what? It's a fairly good kind of way to live your life, I guess. But yeah, Dom, obviously, really interesting perspective, and obviously a big thank you for him coming on. But of course, in terms of subscribers, comments, liking the video, I think me and you, especially just basically over the international break, have kind of looked back and thought there has been an increase here. There's more people watching, especially on YouTube, the podcast. So just a massive thank you. And by all means, please keep subscribing and please keep enjoying and watching and listening to the podcast. So yeah, just wanted to touch on that. But yeah, Nathan, thank you very much for your time. I look forward to that Friday night under the lights next week, and I'm sure, hopefully, off the back of a good result, it'll be another very, very enjoyable and intriguing podcast. to discuss, hopefully, Boro remaining at the top of the Championship. So, as always, thank you from me and Nathan. Thanks for watching and listening. Of course, please make sure to subscribe and rate and review on your audio platforms. And that has been another episode of the Boropolis podcast.